Hello and welcome to all. Although zoos often offer the best conditions we could expect to guarantee the safety and tranquility of their occupants, the fact remains that the animals have an insatiable thirst for freedom. Some animals can no longer bear the monotony of their enclosure and finally decide to go and discover new horizons. But the idea of a rhino or an ostrich running into our streets is so absurd that it has often been staged in Hollywood films, such as the very comical Jumangi. However, sometimes reality exceeds fiction, and that's what we're going to show you today. Here are the 10 wild animals that escaped from a zoo. Let's get started. Did you know that the mascot of the Mozilla Foundation was not a fox, but a red panda? This cute little glutton and bamboo lover can be seen in the logo of Firefox, the browser itself. This strange little mammal of the Ailuridae family, measuring 50 to 64 centimeters long and weighing 6 kilos, looks more like a raccoon and therefore has nothing to do with its distant cousin, the giant panda. But what he misses in muscle, the red panda gains in malice and mischief, as the terrible Rusty proves so well, who decided on a beautiful summer's day to go and see on the other side of his fence if sometimes the grass would not be greener there. A star resident of the Washington Zoo, the fugitive panda has indeed left his enclosure, most likely to go for a little walk, just to stretch his legs a bit and enjoy the nice weather. Immediately after the discovery of his escape, zoo officials made a call for witnesses on internet, warning people not to get too close to the furry fugitive, at the risk of being bitten or scratched by him. Luckily none of this happened, as good old Rusty was found a few hours later, thanks to the intervention of the zoo's teams. The king of the bushy-tailed escape was thus able to return to his cozy nest. Despite all the comfort and attention they receive, wild animals in captivity always yearn for freedom, and penguins are no exception to this rule. A young Humboldt penguin at Tokyo Sea Life Park in Japan, wanting to change the overwhelming routine of his aquarium at all costs, has decided to run away and head for the sea. Better known as 337, the intrepid marine bird climbed an entire wall and slipped through a fence before joining one of the rivers that flow into Tokyo Bay. During the 2 months that the young penguin was on the run, he was spotted several times swimming quietly in the river and probably didn't seem to be bored at all. But his gentle holiday was finally interrupted when the fugitive with his webbed feet and beak was finally apprehended by the officers of the water park, who cornered him on one of the river banks. 337 was thus able to return to his aquarium safe and sound, and the icing on the cake, he brought back with him souvenirs of the trip, which he will be able to count on his penguin friends by the fireside. The Egyptian cobra is one of the most venomous snake species in the world, and its bite can kill an adult male in less than 20 minutes. There's no need to say that this is not the kind of reptile you would like to come across in an alleyway or a supermarket, especially since its natural habitat is not really what you would call very urban. Yet this cobra, native to the dunes and desert plains of North Africa, found himself on a tourist getaway in New York City, having managed to escape by who knows what means from its vivarium at the Bronx Zoo. The little cold-blooded Houdini had literally disappeared from his cage, setting off a veritable zoo battleground and plunging the entire city of New York into psychosis. But after 6 days on the run, the fugitive with fangs and a forked tongue could finally be found, and it wasn't at the foot of the Empire State Building or in a damp corner of Central Park that he had holed up. The cobra was, in fact, hiding in a dark, quiet corner less than 30 meters from its vivarium and was discovered by chance by the cleaning teams. The runaway snake was able to return to its little corner of paradise that it had left a few days earlier, and New York City was able to sleep peacefully again. Cyril was a sea lion who almost caused a diplomatic incident between the United States and Canada. The story goes back to the summer of 1958, when Cyril, a 45-kilogram sea lion, decided to play with the little veins of breeze, escaping from the London Zoo in London, Ontario. The sea mammal had managed to make his way through the waterways to the Maumee River, right in the middle of the United States of America. For more than a week, the creature had been sighted on docks along Lake Erie, including the towns of Toledo, Port Clinton, and Sandusky, before finally being captured by Dan Danford, a mammal curator at the Toledo Zoo. But the story wasn't over yet, because once Cyril was in captivity, London officials had, of course, decided to send a shipment of officials and a truck to bring him home. However, they were vehemently rejected by the zoo director, Phil Skeldon, who claimed to have caught the sea lion in American waters and wanted Canada to make an official request through the American government. Things didn't come to a head in the end, because after a week of bitter negotiations, it was decided to return the sea animal and as of the escape, in the international friendship interest that unites the USA and Canada. With 2.50 meters high and 150 kilograms, the male ostrich is the tallest and heaviest of today's birds, and it must be said that it really imposes itself with such a size. But who would have thought for a moment that he would find himself face to beak at the bend of an alley, with this giant bird that usually populates the African savanna? This is what happened in the Guangxi Zhuang region of southern China when a large adult ostrich managed to escape from a breeding farm and began to parade through the streets of the city. Residents were almost taken aback by the sight of this exotic animal wandering quietly along the road, without the slightest concern for red lights or traffic regulations. The runaway ostrich was finally brought back to its farm safe and sound, and fortunately, no one was hurt. We all love flea markets for the beautiful finds that can be found there, china or antique china full of history and rare collectibles. But no one would ever have thought to come face to face with a beautiful specimen of African elephant weighing more than 3 tons, by going to a summer flea market in the Netherlands. The pachyderm, which answers to the name of Bubba, had indeed escaped from a Dutch circus that had planted its tent near Noordwijkerhout, a village in the province of South Holland. Bubba, therefore, made his way very serenely to the flea market, which he walked back and forth through the various stalls of old clothes and antique trinkets. The 40-year-old elephant was finally able to return to his enclosure at the circus, after a good walk through the market, and without having created the slightest incident. It is unclear which artifact or trinket was intended to be traded in this market, but the lack of breakage contradicts the adage about the elephant's clumsiness in a china shop. Escapes of wild animals from circuses or zoos can sometimes be extremely tragic, especially when it involves dangerous animals such as elephants or big cats, which do not hesitate to savagely attack anyone who gets in their way. In the town of Monreale in Italy, the carabinieri had to arm themselves with hardened steel nerves to deal with a splendid specimen of a white tiger that had escaped from a local circus. The big tomcat, who must have been weighing in at 250 kilograms, had wandered for almost 2 hours through the deserted streets of the city, before finally finding himself cornered by the police in a sort of cage especially improvised for the occasion. The villagers, terribly worried, who had been hiding in their homes following a local alert concerning the escapade of the beast, were finally able to take a breath and thank the police for their quick and effective intervention. As we have seen, wild animals in captivity can be aces of escape, and no pen or cage would be sufficient to keep them indoors against their will. This time it was 3 female rhinos, who decided to emulate the trio of escapees from the famous 1962 Alcatraz escape and managed to sneak out of their safari zoo in Ramat Gan, Israel. Taking advantage of the guards' inattention, the 3 pachyderms, with the sweet names of Rihanna, Karen Pélez, and Carnabella, were caught by the surveillance cameras, quietly trotting towards the path to freedom with the doors wide open. Once outside, the 3 fugitives took a short 10-minute walk in the asphalt parking lot, which surprised them to no end, before finally being able to return inside the zoo, on their own and in complete peace, just as they had come out a few minutes earlier. It must be said that the zoo officials were very lucky that there was no incident, especially considering the Herculean strength of these animals, which can measure up to 4 meters and weigh more than 2 tons. A real tank. They say that history repeats itself, but they also say that we learn from our mistakes. Not for the keepers of the Ramat Gan Safari Zoo anyway. As we saw earlier with the opportunistic escape of the 3 Miss Rhinos who rushed outside the zoo's wide-open doors, this time it was the turn of another pachyderm to escape in the same way. An adult hippopotamus weighing at least 2 tons seized the opportunity that the zoo's doors were forgotten to be closed, and happily swooped through it to reach the freedom and the great expanses of water of his dreams. But just a few minutes after his escape, the fugitive hippo decided to go back inside, disappointed to have found only a banal tarred parking lot and metal boxes on wheels outside, he who had expected to find himself facing a good old African river. The harsh reality played in favor of the guards of this Israeli safari zoo, made world famous for the big blunders of its staff, and the repeated escapes of its pachyderms. So, what do you think of those 10 animals that turned out to be aces of the escape? Which one of them impressed you the most? Give us your thoughts in the comments.